So thank you for taking some time to be at this presidential forum. As I've said to several of you in different occasions and locations, this was scheduled partly because there is information to share that probably will result in some Q&A. That is the conversations about things that may be not what I wanted to say and did say in convocation. So I wanted to take an opportunity early enough in this semester to do some updating, either more in depth about what I said in convocation or to go in some areas that just weren't covered in convocation. For those of you who I have not yet seen, happy new academic year. We are once again, and I say it every year, and every year I think it can't get faster and busier, but it has and does. And so welcome back. We already have not only had move-in day at the residence halls in the first week of classes, but last week a very, very energized and long-awaited ribbon cutting of our sports center. And I know there's some folks from athletics here, and our first women's volleyball game we won. And if somebody said to me as I left, that end of that game was, we now have, we have won every game, every home game. So I trust we are going to keep that up all year. Also, last night we had another wonderful ribbon cutting of the new space for the CSU Institute for Palliative Care. A good crowd, some new awards, and another gift from Darlene Shiley toward palliative care. So semester is busy and moving forward. Much celebration, much work to be done, and the pace always stays very quick on this campus. I want to talk a little bit about the budget, the graduation initiative, the diversity updates, and some work from our Great Colleges to Work For campus culture work group, not necessarily in that order. And just a little bit of recap from convocation in case you were not there or did not choose to go to the president's page and see the 4-minute abbreviated version of convocation. This year's convocation was my 13th here at Cal State San Marcos. And my message, I hope if you were there or read or viewed the video, is how impressive it is that this campus and all of you come together every day, unified in our mission to build bridges for student success. These bridges, as you know better than I, are built day by day on best practices, on tried and true processes, are built with intentionality, are built connected to strategic priorities at the university level, division level, department level. They come together with a lot of creativity, and we also know at Cal State San Marcos a heavy dose of good humor. I highlighted a number of awards and honors that we've received in the past year at convocation, and I'm not going to go over them again, although they were many and meaningful and national awards. Since convocation, we have been named for the 3rd year in a row the 2016 Higher Education Excellence and Diversity HEED Award from Insight in Diversity magazine. Yes. And I mentioned it at convocation, but since it's connected to that, and for the first time ever, Cal State San Marcos was listed in the top 100 universities in the nation, and that's out of 4,000, for producing, for the highest number of minorities produced in 10 disciplines here at Cal State San Marcos. I also did some shout outs, but I think it bears repeating here, about our impressive gains in both proposals and awards from our Office of Graduate Studies and Research. Last year, the office received $9.2 million in grants and contract funding, a 15% jump over the year previous. What's more, a nearly 40% increase in the number of grant proposals submitted compared to the year before, up from $27 million in grant submissions to $43 million. And because of this, we anticipate that in this quarter, we may receive in this first quarter more in award funding than we did all last year. So another indicator of priorities, another indicator of the strategic movement of post-award granting into the provosts and vice provosts arena, and I certainly know that there is more success to come there. I recounted at convocation, but again, it bears repeating, and Regina would probably tell me that I didn't repeat it if I didn't. So what am I going to talk about? WASC, 10-year reaccreditation cycle, the longest possible for an institution. Thanks not just to Regina. We know she led the effort, and it was a campus-wide, multi-year effort, but with many, many commendations and a few recommendations that as any accrediting body just has to come in and ask a little bit for you to report on. I would say to you that the piece in their letter to us that really struck me, and I commend you all for it, was that the commission commended us, quote, on addressing the challenges of the last decade with a creative entrepreneurial spirit and institutional pride. So, to all of you. Now, quickly to the budget, and not to bring us from highs down to the down to a little bit different level. Last November, the CSU support budget requested, if you may or may not remember, $297.6 million. $241 million from state funds and about $56 million of student tuition fee revenue tied to the funded enrollment growth. However, the state budget that Governor Brown signed in June 2016, this past June, gave us a general fund of $154 million for the CSU, which fell short $90 million, which means whatever language the governor chooses to use, it was not a fully funded budget for the CSU. And you can find a complete breakdown of how that $154 million was allocated on the University Budget Office website. Additionally, and very necessarily, all of the represented units, pretty much all of them in the CSU, negotiated or renegotiated compensation increases, which was a good thing and a long time awaited for so many of our employees. However, for the first time in history, part of that funding had to be picked up by campuses. So this year, for Cal State San Marcos to pay all of those 1% of all compensation increases, salary plus benefits, meant $1 million that we didn't anticipate as we projected our budget funding. The governor also announced a one-time, he loves these one-time opportunities, a one-time $35 million grant to the CSU to meet his Graduation Initiative 2025 goals. And I want to talk just a minute about those goals. So you may recall that our goals for 2015 in the former graduation initiative, we at Cal State San Marcos exceeded our own goals. That said, the governor and legislators, and indeed our own Board of Trustees, still feel that the CSU needs to stretch, that the CSU needs to not only be at the average of public national comprehensive universities collectively and by peer institutions by size, but that if we are the exemplary national university system, that we should actually be beyond it. There were two presidents on that Graduation Initiative Steering Committee, which represented and had representation from the CSSA, from faculty, from were provosts, vice presidents of student affairs, and we grappled with both the methodology to ascertain how each college would be given stretch goals, and we talked about, in fact, while stretch goals, and we are not unfamiliar to big, audacious stretch goals, but how, in fact, when you give stretch enrollment target goals, how much they are literally connected to variables we don't control, right? Like the state budget, like compensation increases, like the state economy, et cetera. So our goals at Cal State, so the system goals are high. particularly because the governor somehow has a laser-like focus on 4-year graduation rates, irrespective of the demographics of the students that the CSU graduates, laser-like focus on raising that one particular variable for certain. We now, as at CSUSM, have been given stretch goals. 2025, remember, is the target, so about certainly 10 years away. A 4-year rate of 30%, 4-year graduation rate, we're now at about 14, and a 6-year graduation rate of 61%, and we're now at about 51%. A 6-year graduation rate, and then 0 in achievement gap between represented and underrepresented minorities. All of them big reaches, even for this talented collective team. And the $35 million is one-time funding. We have put in our graduation success plan, but the plans actually have to go to the system, have gone to the system. The system has to put their overarching plan together. The governor has to accept that plan, and then if he does, and we assume he will, in October, he will give the system the $35 million one-time funding. However, campuses have already gotten their allocation of if and when that happens. And our allocation at Cal State San Marcos will be $1.25 million. And yes, $1.25 million in one-time funding for those aggressive goals does not go far. So obviously, we will be already looking at our plans, trying to look at what you can do with one-time funding, what you can do with one-time funding that may be focused on short-term wins, because obviously that's also what the governor is looking at system-wide in order to make this $35 million be a permanent source of funding. So you may hear a lot about that, and I am not unaware. I was at the table in terms of the Graduation Initiative Steering Committee, and all of us, I think, understand what that means, and that those variables that we don't control can greatly affect the performance indicators for any or all campuses. And I will say to you, one of my concerns that I vocalized on behalf of this campus and on behalf of CSU's students is I know this campus won't, and I hope the system does not choose to meet those goals by raising admissions standards, because that would really divert us from the mission of the CSU and us from the mission of CSUSM. So that's over here. That $35 million, if it became permanent, we also have a guarantee that the allocation formula used this year would not be the same, because this year it really was for short-term wins where it could be, and hopefully the $35 million would have a different allocation process if it became permanent. Okay, back to the budget for a minute. What our dollar amount today at Cal State San Marcos represents is about where we were in 2008. And we are serving 3,200 more students. The system is serving about 40,000 more students for the same period of time. So yes, are we underfunded still? Absolutely. Have we caught up from when the recession started in 2008? Absolutely not. Have we tried to move forward to assure quality education and support services for students? Yes. Are we trying to assure that we can increase tenure density? Absolutely. But those are the realities we're facing in terms of either marginal, whether you want to look at it marginal cost per student, and or looking at it just in terms of total dollar value since 2008 to 2016. I would say to you that the $1.4 million in academic excellence and student success fees that we now have had in place, this is our 4th year, I believe, has certainly helped us toward faculty hires, toward academic student support services, and the $1.4 million new dollars this year, $1 million went immediately to instruction, academic affairs for instruction, and the other $400,000 roughly in those those two chunks went to academic student support services. So also staying aligned with the students' goals and our commitment to how that money would be funded. And it certainly helps when I tell you what some of the surprises were in our budget this year. We are already in the budget cycle for the system, and at the board meeting beginning September 20th, the board will begin their deliberation on what their support budget that goes to the governor will be. They'll finalize that budget in their November Board of Trustees meeting, and I can assure you that they will continue, as they have in the past, to ask for what the CSU needs. And then we will collectively have to make the case to the governor and our legislators for whether we can get what we need or literally have something like a $90 million gap continuing to go forward. As that process moves forward and we begin to see, as we have in the past, we will engage the University Budget Committee when we have more information. We had so little money, and we knew that, that was even available for allocation, that this year we knew that what we had to do was really take that limited amount of funds and really commit to a few, now I'm off my own, to a few places, and that was funding for instruction, some minimal funding for both the renovation for the Black Student Center, and that's a one-time fund, an ongoing fund for the director's position of the Black Student Center, and maintenance of our information management technology. So those of you who were here and with me during all of the 17 budget forums, we are continuing as a campus through a little bit better times, but not the best of times, to really stay and hold to our principles of staying connected and strong and purposive about our values and mission, continuing to explore creative partnerships and creative ways of meeting students and this region's needs while still being abysmally underfunded by the state of California. So I talked about the graduation initiative. Let me talk a little bit about diversity, because certainly last spring challenged universities across the nation in terms of both student activism, in terms of the national presidential rhetoric that continues to, I think, find and create places and spaces in our national universities that are new and for which we don't always have clarity of what is the best response in moments of incidents and demands and crises. So, one, what we have done that continues the work is what you know is toward the end of last semester, I did appoint Dr. Cynthia Chavez-Matoya to be the interim Chief Diversity Officer and AVP for Diversity, Educational Equity, and Inclusion. And she has worked with both the Diversity Inclusion Strategic Planning Committee to assure that the processes of that vetting continued in the summer. That group will now, because what we heard a lot was that the objectives and goals for most people made sense, but obviously where the rubber meets the road and what people really wanted to see was the action steps and where the responsible departments and divisions would be for those action steps. So that's what we'll do as a campus this fall, that those action steps connected to the goals and objectives that you've already seen will be out in town hall or halls and on the website for commentary, so that we have the ability in a very broad way to have people say, yes, that's an appropriate action step, and yes, we think it should be this body or this group, who takes ownership for them. We then will look at both, the timeline for when we want to be assessing them, and obviously some of them, many of them may take resources, and that will help us to hopefully look at if there is additional funding, how much of that new funding goes toward our diversity inclusion strategic plan. The other part of the diversity is, as you know, the search for the AVP of diversity ended with a recommendation to me to close the search and reopen it in the fall. They also had a unanimous recommendation that Graham was happy to accept for Graham to continue to chair that committee, and literally for the entire committee, save the student who we allowed to graduate, that committee would stay together as our committee, and they have started and already had 2 meetings, I think, to work with Koya, our search firm partner, and we assume this time we will, both with more time and maybe with some lessons learned by them, our search firm and by us, to have a robust pool and bring candidates in this fall, in early November, I think the provost said last week. So that continues to move on. The last thing I want to talk about, just for a moment, I'm trying to watch is over the summer, we being first the Executive Council and then others, the time to begin to reflect on some of what happened on this campus nationally throughout the CSU, that we began to say, how could we be better prepared? How could we be, as a campus, more proactive? What were lessons learned for us? So first, my Executive Council, the vice presidents and my chief of staff and I talked about this. And then we spent time in our Executive Council retreat in June talking about and looking at that. The presidents also, the presidents of the CSU, created a full day just about 3 weeks ago. I'm now looking for Matt, where as the CSU, we came together, CSU presidents +1, and these were not personal +1s, these were professional +1s, where we could look at proactive strategies in the moment, dealing with a crisis, and communication and strategies afterwards. What we did here was, one part of what we did was we looked at the policies and processes we already had in place, that in the moment we sometimes failed to look at and utilize. Policies like assembly, right to assemble, policies about posting, policies about, now I'm going to look for my list, policies about legislative action. We also looked at the CSU's statement on free speech. We also found the Academic Senate's policy on faculty ethics, and we began to create for ourselves, and now it is in a toolkit on our website, a variety of already existing policies we had here, or the system had, and the Senate had, not that the Senate's not one of us, Michael, sorry, that we moved fast and didn't think about. Then we also said, all right, what else do we have to think about? Earlier, about 2 weeks ago, when the semester started, you hopefully saw that I put out a statement, not a policy, but a statement about what I think free speech, how we here have always talked about free speech, and beginning to talk about that very blurry gray space between free speech and hate speech, and where we think and believe and have always talked in conversations and in policies about what that means. We also looked at the Culture of Leadership document, which was created several years ago from the Great College, out of the Great Colleges to Work For conversation, and in a larger group meeting said, a lot of people on campus don't know about it and may not see themselves in that. So I asked a group to look at that, create a shortened version without some of the behaviorally specific, and put that out. And there will be at least one town hall, and it will also be up on the website, where we describe what we, hopefully collectively, at least collectively at the end of this process, believe to be the culture that is Cal State San Marcos's, of respect, of civility, whatever the language that you all look at and see yourself in and believe to be ours. Another framing piece for how this fall we might have better tools for what may be some difficult conversations. The national rhetoric is not getting less. You may have seen, I think just this morning, put out the pushed out communication to the campus, to students, slightly differently than to faculty and staff, about the anti-abortion group coming to campus next week. When we know in advance that these groups who have the right to be on a public university campus are coming, and we know that people are going to be concerned, find it offensive, etc., we're going to try to be more proactive by reminding people about free speech, reminding people about where the right to protest is and where disruption then begins, etc. So we have really worked on that. The Council of Presidents, actually Matt Trippi and I were the lead presenters about proactive strategies, because it became clear to me in a conversation at a previous Council of Presidents meeting that I really think we are the only CSU who actually has reflected back and said, how can we do it better? And we learned perhaps some other takeaways from that, from the total day's discussion about in the moment and afterwards. So a lot of thought, a lot of continued work around diversity, but not just around diversity, around our campus culture, around how university campuses nationally can protect the rights of free speech while protecting individuals' defamation of character. And while we can protect the right to protest, we also have to protect and ensure the absence of disruption of an ongoing event. So a busy summer in that regard, and a lot of sort of forward proactive planning. I hope the proactive planning means we won't have to utilize all of it, but it was, I think, instructive for us, and hopefully you'll find the toolkit, if as you need it, instructive, and we will likely be pushing out and building that electronic toolkit as some of these conversations move forward. The culture one, for example, move forward. So, a busy start to the semester, a summer for some of us of some reflection and proactive strategizing, a good year ahead, although a tight budget year ahead. And I will end by saying that I am continually appreciative of, through good times and more difficult times and sort of mediocre times, and maybe we're not in the, wow, the budget is great, but we really always come together with that student focus. We do really come together collaboratively, cross-departmentally and cross-divisionally in ways that literally doesn't happen in a lot of other places. And it takes every one of you to keep the focus on the big goal, to understand that collaboration is really one of the things that makes this campus special and that exceeds performance expectations. And maybe I will end there, going off script again, to say every year the presidents have what is called an annual conference with the chancellor. He doesn't call it evaluation, we don't get graded. But I will say to you, and Chancellor Reed did not do this, so I'm only going to go back to the 4 I have had with, one was a triennial review and the 3 with Chancellor White. There is really nothing the chancellor can say except keep up the good work. And while he's saying that to me, I am saying that to you. Every goal I put forward, every goal he sets for this campus, we meet it or we exceed it. And we do it with best practices, high impact practices. We do it thoughtfully, intentionally, not by accident. And we do it because you come together every day to not only build those bridges, but keep those bridges strong to student success. So thank you, and I'll take any questions. Thank you. And we have people who have mics, Vivi and Megan, if there's questions. As much for the video as it is just for us to hear each other. Okay.
Good afternoon, President Haynes.
Afternoon.
I have been curious in how the campus budgets how the campus finds the money for budgeting the years, and some campuses have gone towards public-private partnerships. Is there a foreseeable future where San Marcos goes towards that for funding?
Ask the last part a little bit either louder or clearer. The public-private partnership piece.
Is Cal State San Marcos going towards public-private partnerships?
Okay, so thank you for that. Maybe I'll go backwards into what I heard of the budget question. So when I talk about, I won't bring all of you into this. When I talk about public-private partnerships, it means an array of opportunities that we have creatively done to provide access to quality Cal State San Marcos education. So one of them already has existed for years, and that's our off-campus center at Temecula that now serves 600 plus degree-seeking students, plus students in certificate programs, no state dollars, yes, a little bit more tuition, but guaranteed time to graduation because they're cohorted models. In that case, it's a public-public partnership, but it's still a partnership because it's the city of Temecula, the Temecula Unified School District, and who am I forgetting? Us. Well, that's a three. Did I forget? Okay. So that's one example. The other example in a public-private partnership is the quad, right? So 900 students in residence halls across the street on property owned and in residence halls paid for by a developer that we manage the same way we manage UVA in terms of student life and academic programming. Another example, at the time we had the demand for student housing, we couldn't afford, if we had paid for it to be built on the campus at that time, we would not have been market competitive and probably nobody would have lived in those dorms. So a sort of a second example of those kinds of partnerships. So 2 examples. 3, as we look at right now, in addition to a lot of needs, one of our looming needs in the near term, and I don't have to tell probably many people in this room, is classrooms and academic space. And I'm looking at Kamel, who helped us through. I'm not giving you this, Kamel, but I'm looking at Kamel because, 2 years ago, he did a whole set of modeling that moved us to the new scheduling this year. And while it had, there were pieces and places where people were uncomfortable with a new schedule, it bought us several years of growth without a new building, 1. 2, it will give us more argument in the system for a greater utilization of instructional space. And 3, we are at the bottom of the system's list of needs for new buildings. Why? Because, or for funding and needs for new buildings. Why? Because at the top of the list is huge amount of deferred maintenance and a lot of old buildings in our system that need to be demolished and rebuilt because they're so unsafe. So the beauty of Cal State San Marcos, whose oldest building is 23 years old, is we are at the bottom when you rank it in those 2 categories. So only way we can get it up is to continue to better use our instructional space. 2, I'm looking to Neil now, to raise, get some philanthropists to name it, and that would, if we had a multi-million-dollar naming opportunity, might raise it up. And the 3rd, I'm coming back to your point, and the 3rd is to say, are there other ways in public-private partnerships that we could actually get somebody else to build some classroom and academic space on a lease to purchase potential to do it. So those are the ways. And mostly they're physical plant, but in Temecula, they're the entire program. And I would say to you in Temecula, not only do we have 600 plus full-time students in full-time academic programs, but 25% of our students still come to us from Southwest Riverside. So we're not taking away from that. We're serving a different segment of the population in Temecula, that is the full-time working adult who can't afford because they have childcare, can't afford because they're working full-time to come here. But it has been an and, not an or kind of opportunity. Did that answer all your questions? Yeah. Okay. Good job. Hi. Well, you can shout, and maybe you can also try to get the mic to Tony. It is Tony, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you had talked about the search for AVP diversity and that you were working with a search firm partner.
Yes.
Who is the partner and how are they helping?
Well, who is the partner is Koya Partnerships, and they were chosen. I may hand this off to Graham in a minute, but they were chosen because we worked, as many as you know, with Isaacson Miller for a number of years. Before that, DeWitt Kiefer. And there are some search firms that will just say to you, this is not our area of expertise. So we looked for a search firm whose area of expertise really included looking for chief diversity officers, which is still a new and burgeoning field. You want to say any more in the answer to that?
How are they helping?
Oh, that was, sorry. How do search firms help? Okay, sorry. I was going to lean over so you could use my mic. Okay, you can chat. Yeah, okay, there you go.
So, to me, there's a difference between a recruitment and a search. A search is often when we try to do it ourselves and we're out there searching. This company really does have a lot of contacts. They attend a lot of the meetings that are relevant to diversity issues in education, so they make contacts that way. And of course, they're involved, in addition to the recruitment that they do, they're involved in advertising in all the right kinds of places. And they do all of that in consultation with us. So really, they're going way above and beyond the kind of effort that we could put into this and have the expertise that we can't really bring to trying to do a search or a recruitment like this. So that's really what we depend on them for a lot of the time. They also handle a lot of the administrative side of doing all of this, which helps.
Vivi gets that. Vivi. Well, no, it's for the video. Tasha, it's for the video.
Okay. Oh, hello, my name is Tasha. I'm an alumni, so thank you for all of your work. I saw that your graduation rate's at 30% for 4 years. So I'm wondering, and this is a very loaded question, I know you can answer it in a few minutes, what are some factors that are causing kind of the dropout rate?
That are causing the
So
drop.
why they're not graduating, basically, within 4 years?
Oh, yeah, she'll take that or I'll be buzzing with 2 mics, right? So, I may hand this off as well, but because of the demographics, Tasha is an alumni. She's also a doctoral student at Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach, and is shadowing me at a couple of events, and this is one of them, right? I didn't plant this question, but I knew she was coming. And I would also say that she was in my women's studies class when I taught, which was a lot of years ago. But so what all of us know, and probably you know, is one, the demographics of our student population are now about 55% are first generation and college students. About 35% of our students are underrepresented minorities across all years, all of our students. Large percentage are working students and/or child and family caring students. So, part of trying to educate both the governor and the board about 6-year graduation rates possible, and we've made great strides there. The 4-year, part of the problem is that these students have lives, that these students, some of them still come to us with need for remediation, so they also struggle with having to get through that either summer, which the summer bridge programs more and more capture them. Part of it is because we've had both a culture here, and for that population of students, sometimes you say maybe they can't handle a full course load of 15 credit hours, and because for financial aid they need only 12. So, when you say, well, a student going at 12 credit hours a semester and not taking summer cannot finish 120 credit units, right? Mathematicians in the room, cannot do it in 4 years. So the other is how we, whether we can provide, as we are with, first year experiences and now our academic student success center, Dawn, I hope I got that right if you're here, where we're really trying to look at high impact practices, provide, intrusive kinds of experiences for students. Oh, there's Martha, she'll. But, so some of it's our student demographics. Some of it's probably been a culture here that we didn't really think articulate to ourselves that when you say to students, maybe it's better that you don't, as a freshman, as a first-time freshman, take 15 units, what we're de facto saying is you are already on a longer path than 4 years. I think 30% four-year graduation rates for us is a stretch. If we get the funding, we know how to do it. We know for a group of those students, it is what I said, is getting them 15 to finish. It is now with all of our e-tools that we've given them, also with the degree planner now. I mean, what students don't often know is, students also change majors, right? Part of what we keep saying to the governor and the board is the other thing is, we want students to graduate in a timely fashion. We want to reduce internal barriers that are of our own making, or when it was the recession, of the recession's making, meaning we couldn't get enough course sections out. But part of their time here ought to be also exploration, so that every student comes in knowing what their major will be, tests that out, and stays with that major. And when you change majors, or you double major, or life happens, then that 4-year degree becomes 4.5. In fact, there are in the system, and this was a surprise to me, a very large number of 4.5-year, right? So they don't get counted in the 4-year graduation rate, but they're not going 6 or 7. They're actually graduating somewhere around 4.5 or 5, which is really not terrible nationally if you look at comparator institutions, and certainly not terrible when you look at the student demographics. The other thing that is already positively impacting our student time to graduation is those students from our 10 MOUs, because those students come without need for remediation. So that's a barrier already passed. Those students come to us with higher GPAs and higher SATs, and for the cohorts that have actually come to us and graduated, they graduate in shorter periods of time. So those are already in place and are continuing to feed more and more students to us that are prepared coming in and better prepared in skill sets going forward. And now we have more things, whether it's what is it, 15 to finish? Is that what we're calling it? Oh, well, sorry, didn't want to get ahead of you. Sometimes the president knows too much. So, Tasha, those are I think some of our, both why the 4-year is hard and why I think it's also fully defensible that we're not looking to be a university that graduates all of our students in 4 years, because we are not a residential elite institution, and that is not who we were planned to be, and that's not who we're going to be while I'm here. Any other questions or comments? Oh, yeah.
So adding on to the graduation thing, would you also think that like fees and parking fees, would that like decrease student graduation? Do you think that?
Well, I think it's certainly generally, I think it's safe to say that the CSU at large, and certainly Cal State San Marcos, doesn't want to get fees of any kind, tuition and other fees, to a point where we are disadvantaging the very student populations that we see as our niche, right? The first generation, the underrepresented student populations. So there's the value-based statement. The financial realities are what you heard earlier, and that's, I think, has been the crux of our problem since 2008, quite frankly, and continues, is a set of value premises that I think everybody in this room came here to support, and the reality financially of the state not giving us enough money. And so this, not just California, states have been disinvesting in higher education now for a long time. So Do we want to increase tuition or fees? We, the CSU, or we, CSUSM? No. Do we want to keep our eye on student loan indebtedness? Absolutely. And we still at Cal State San Marcos have about $13,000 in average student debt. Would we like it to be zero? Absolutely. Is it 60 or 100,000? No. Because we also keep our eye on it. Can I say to you that there's going to be no, and some fees, are dedicated fees, so that's the other, as you begin to parcel this out, it's the other piece of it. For example, parking fees or student health fees or student union fees or athletic fees that are designated. So I can't take those and move them and pay for salaries, unless they're salaries in student health, for example. So all of that. But what we've done, in the CSU is try to figure out how do you continue quality, how do you assure access, and how do you pay for it? And those really are, continue to be the fine points of balance between that value proposition and the financial realities that the state of California places. And last thing I'll say, and then I'll get off this soapbox, but I cannot believe that California, the state that led the nation for decades in education, can think of how much they are now disinvesting in higher education. And the CSU, not the UC, the CSU is the workforce engine of this state, without question, in numbers, in quality, in the labor force that are the teachers and the nurses and the social workers, and now increasingly the young entrepreneurs and the people going in as new people in marketing and research. So it is, without question, will continue to be every one of us in this room to educate our neighbors, our legislators, and to say, how in the world can this state not invest in this incredible system that literally transforms lives and will transform the state of California or not. And the long-term implications for this state will be amazing if we don't invest more in the California State University system. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to say that. Any other questions? All right, thank you all for taking the time.